It literally is an inner earth that is described with trees and mountains. And you can see this in Babylonian literature. You can see this also in Egyptian literature. And this is something that has been associated with the North Pole and the South Pole. And in the book of Jasher, Enoch is said to have been caught up at a place that was frozen. And Enoch described huge snow pyramids in the area where he was taken up. The Hyperboreans were the legendary white race out of the north that were the giants, the white giants. We see echoes of this in the Game of Thrones, Beyond the Wall in the north.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't block me. Quest for truth, breaking chains, making waves. That's what I do. When they hate, I create.
You've dedicated a lot of your life to studying the occult and the hidden things about the world we live in. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the idea of the hollow earth and the places we're not allowed to go, like Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, because right now we're seeing a supposed disclosure of things. This is what we're being told that is coming. There's even, a documentary that recently released, political officials who have declared that this is coming. Tons of different scientific studies and supposed evidences and proofs to back all of this stuff up. And so I wanted to discuss your research into this topic because it seems that a lot of people are saying that these things are coming from inside of the earth or from inside of the water. And so I'm going to let you take the floor, man. Tell us about this subject.
Well, just a couple days ago, I watched the new documentary, Age of Disclosure, and it was extremely well done. And there were people on it like Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, Marco Rubio, and it was really stunning. We're at the point where there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that there are craft flying up there that can do things that are way beyond anything anyone in this world is capable of doing. And there was much discussion about things that were underneath the water, that there have been radio signals that have been traced by the Navy to some of the deepest parts in the ocean. And there's some really, really strange things going on. And a lot of these are connected with anomalies we're coming and we're seeing out of the North and the South Pole. And in scripture, and it was really interesting to me, the way that they explained how they cover this up. And there are multiple people now that are saying they have seen recovered craft and biologicals, as they put it, actual non-human bodies recovered from these crafts. And they explained how they do it. And what they have done is that they will have these contractors come in that do work for the government, the big defense companies, and they will allocate the recovered craft and the biologicals to these defense companies, and they don't show up on the Freedom of Information documents. So therefore, this stuff is buried in these big defense contractors, and it gives them some amazing technology that they can reverse engineer that is just absolutely phenomenal. But the question is, can we trust these defense companies? And for this reason, there are actually things that these defense companies have that are working. This goes back to what Eisenhower said back in 61, the military industrial complex that he was so afraid of back then. And literally, there are people in these big defense contractors that are in league with senators, congressmen, and whatever that can control things without even the cabinet or the president knowing. And it's really phenomenal. But they explain there on this Age of Disclosure documentary, which was really impressive and well done, in my opinion. And it really makes sense to how these people are able to control this and keep it secret.
Where do you think that they got these ideas about inner Earth and stuff like that? I know that based on a lot of the research that you've done over the years, because I've been on broadcasts where we've talked about it, but it seems like there were other people seeking technologies and seeking things within inside the Earth as well. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. And the Germans in World War II, they were all about it. Um, Hitler believed that in Hyperborea, and he believed that he sent big expeditions into Tibet and other places to try to find entrances to Hyperborea. And it was his dream. He believed in the blood purity. And from the biblical standpoint, it would be blood defilement. And he actually wanted to breed the German people with the residents of Hyperborea to create the Ubermann, the super race of people. And he was dead serious about it. And when you hear, there have been some stunning statements that have been made by Tim Burchett about things that we know that are underneath the ocean, multiple huge bases, they have called them, that are underneath the ocean. And it is now, there are people in our military and militaries around the world that know that there is really something to the underwater and inner earth compartments. And this is something that you can believe biblically. And in our Book of Enoch commentary, we talked a lot about this. And uh, I think I got old Enoch here. I'll just read a little bit here from chapter 26 of the Book of Enoch. And he said, I went from thence to the middle of the earth. And that doesn't mean halfway between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. That means in the center. And it says, I went from thence to the middle of the earth, and I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches abiding and blooming of a dismembered tree. And there I saw a holy mountain, and underneath the mountain to the east was a stream, and it flowed toward the south. And there was the sea they called the Erythraean Sea. And we know the Bible, it describes the four rivers that flow from the throne and come out into Eden. And in the book of Enoch and other non canonical books, it literally is an inner earth that is described with trees and mountains. And you can see this in Babylonian literature. You can see this also in Egyptian literature, where there is literally a world inside of our world. And this is something that has been associated with the North Pole and the South Pole. And in the book of Jasher, Enoch is said to have been caught up at a place that was frozen. And Enoch described huge snow pyramids in the area where he was taken up. And some biblical cosmologists theorize that literally there is a portal between the North and the South Pole that connects them. And some even would theorize that even water flows through this portal to cause the tides upon the earth. But Enoch supposedly was caught up there from the portal there in the north. And from the most remotest times, we find these associations with portals, anomalies, and just strange occurrences that we're not being told the truth about Antarctica or the North Pole, and we haven't been for a long, long, long time.
So what are these Hyperboreans? Because obviously the Antarctica was a huge part of the Germans in their goal to reach Antarctica and to be there's even evidence supposedly of them being there in these tunnels under the ice. And so what are the Hyperboreans? If you're in pain, stop for a second and consider that there might be a pain cream out there that actually works. This pain cream is designed to actually go through all 7 layers of your skin to bring relief to your chronic pain. I'm 43 and I like to go out and do jujitsu and do a lot of other things, and I suffer from carpal tunnel, and this actually works in seconds for that pain. There's links in the description. There's also 2 coupon codes that you guys can use. You can use one or the other. One's for either $8 off, or the other one is for free shipping. So whichever one suits you, check it out. Thank you guys.
The Hyperboreans were the legendary white race out of the north that were the giants, the white giants. We see echoes of this in the Game of Thrones, Beyond the Wall in the north, the race of the white giants, and we've seen the reports of the tall whites on military bases. We've talked about that Midnight Ride, the tall whites, and basically what they are. These are the Nephilim. These are the Genesis chapter 4, when the sons of God come into the daughters of men. And these giants live and remain, I believe, to this day. And back in the 4th chapter of Genesis, when it says that Cain was banished from the face of the earth, that word face means surface. And I believe that ever since the rebellion of Cain and his banishment, that many of his race and also of the Nephilim have lived in the heart of the earth. And I think this is why we're seeing, even to this day, we see dogmen, all kinds of reports of dogmen, Bigfoot, all kinds of these crypto creatures. And all of these reports are always coordinated with places where we have caves and military facilities. And back there with Mothman out at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, there was a military base where in World War II they made massive amounts of dynamite, and they had underground tunnels, and also there were natural tunnels, and this was the hangout of the Mothman. And we see this reoccurring thing wherever we see these creatures, and it's linked to the heart of the earth. And biblically, when we understand what the Bible says about Genesis chapter 6, we can make a lot of sense of it, just exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and for people that don't know a lot about Genesis 6 and that scenario that happened there, what would cause these entities to be in the heart of the earth? And could this some of this be spiritual, like the spiritual heart of the earth too, like Abraham's bosom, and they're trying to unleash maybe spirits or whatever?
Well, biblically, it was the flood of Noah, where the Bible says that everything upon the earth that breathed was destroyed. And of course, this would include folks that were these entities that were able to get to the heart of the earth. And spiritually, the Bible tells us that, and in the book of Enoch, in the 15th chapter, it tells us that when these Nephilim died, in Genesis chapter 6, it tells us that the fallen angels mated with human women and produced the offspring. They are called the Nephilim before the flood and the Rephaim after the flood. And also there's several other different kinds of giants listed in the Bible, quite a few actually. And when these entities died, when this offspring between a fallen angel and a human woman died, according to the 15th chapter of the book of Enoch, that they became a disembodied spirit. In the 26th chapter of the book of Isaiah, it says the Rephaim do not rise. They do not have a part in the resurrection. So these became the disembodied spirits. And in the New Testament, this is what is called devils that will attack and oppress the children of God. And that is the physical and the spiritual aspect of it, which certainly affects us to this day big time.
Yeah, so they were spending a lot of money looking for this, and it's obvious that major technology has been produced since then. There's been an international treaty on places like Antarctica. What are some strange things about Antarctica that you found anomalies?
Well, if you look, if you would ask Siri, AI would tell you that in 1828, Antarctica was discovered. But you can look. In 1966, Charles Hapgood wrote a book called The Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. And he has in that book probably at least a half a dozen maps from the 1500s and earlier, the Pyre Reese being probably the most famous of those, that had Antarctica on the map in the 1500s, several hundred years before it was discovered, according to what they tell us in school. And furthermore, the maps, like on the Pyre Reese map, he has the coastline of Antarctica drawn without ice on it. And so do several other of these maps. They show Antarctica without ice. And today, the areas that they map are covered with huge sheets of ice. You couldn't even see the coastline. But with ground penetrating radar, they can determine that these maps are accurate. Now, that presents us with some amazing possibilities of why that is so. But the obvious thing is we have went through some amazing earth changes that we don't know about. You know, how does Antarctica go from being without ice to ice and covered in deep layers of ice? We're talking about things that would give credence to theories of resets and losses in time and many other mysterious things. But there have been in that southern region of Antarctica, they have actually found at high elevations on mountains tropical plants and tropical animals that show that at one time it had a very tropical um, uh, climate instead of the frozen desert. And today it's also interesting that beginning back in 1979, Anthony West wrote a book called The Serpent in the Sky. And he was the first one, to my knowledge, to put forth the idea that there was water erosion on the Sphinx. And then there was a fellow come along by the name of Robert Schlock from Boston University, a very credible scientist, that he confirmed that. He said, in his opinion, there was water erosion on the Sphinx. Well, here again, we've got evidence. It's been a long time since we've had a flood in the Sahara. And this gives us evidence that there have been massive changes upon this earth that we're not aware of. We can see the evidence of them, and this is stuff to the magnitude in Genesis 10, where it talks about in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided, and this would give credence to ideas like that the earth at one time, all of the continents, you can just put them together and they fit perfectly. What's the word for that, John?
Pangea.
Pangea. Thank you. Yeah, Pangea. That there would be some real credibility to that kind of idea. But we know that what we're being told is not true. And they should be in a position. I mean, we can look at these maps from the 1500s that show Antarctica without ice. If we can do it, they're probably smart enough to do that. And we're not being told the truth, and the reasons are why. And one of the real things about Antarctica is the Germans, who were fascinated with Hyperborea, and Mr. Hitler with breeding the German people with the Hyperboreans for blood purity. At the end of World War II, there were 54 German submarines that were not accounted for. And some of these subs were able to hold 432 tons of fuel and food. And numerous expeditions. It's well known and documented the numerous expeditions the Germans made and established bases there in Antarctica. And I firmly believe that these 54 German subs, much of the German gold and wealth, and many of the Germans that they wound up there at Antarctica after the war. And I don't believe Mr. Hitler died in the bunker. Neither did the Americans, neither did the Russians. They hotly pursued him after the war and did everything they could. They didn't believe it either. That was the public story for public consumption, but I don't believe that that was the truth of the matter.
And there's other accounts too, like Admiral Byrd, which I know you're aware of,
Oh
and there's
boy, yeah.
a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding Admiral Byrd. What about Admiral Byrd is interesting to you?
Well, Operation High Jump was 1947, and Mr. Byrd claimed that I guess the truncated version, he literally flew into another world where he saw things that he shouldn't have saw and shouldn't even have been there according to any understanding of our rational mind. And on his return to the United States after Operation High Jump, he was confined in a mental institution from 1947 to 1955. And there's all kinds of speculation. If he saw, and I have every reason to believe that he did see what he saw, just the things he saw could have made him lose his mind. Or was it the government just putting him away to shut him up? We don't know. But there in 1947, Operation High Jump, this was in July of 1947, this was Roswell. And also in 1947, Harry Truman signed the NSA Act, and the head of the NSA then was James Forrestal, who's the Truman's Secretary of State. Now, also in 1947, James Forrestal was the reputed head of Majestic 12. That was basically put in the supervision of reverse engineering the craft they found at Roswell and others. There was another crash a few months before Roswell right there in New Mexico. And supposedly, Mr. Forrestal and Majestic 12, they were in charge of the reverse engineering of the craft and the care and the study of the biologicals, the non human bodies. Supposedly, there were four. And it's very interesting. Mr. Forrestal also lost his mind. And here again, we don't know whether, the impact, it's hard dealing with a lot of stuff if you know the Lord. But you could imagine somebody that would experience what Mr. Byrd did, seeing all kinds of stuff that shouldn't even be there. And then Mr. Forrestal, looking at these recovered craft, alien bodies. But Mr. Forrestal's wife had him committed to Bethesda Mental Hospital, and there he supposedly committed suicide. Now, his brother Henry was very vocal, and he insisted that his brother was murdered, and many other people too, extremely suspicious of the death of James Forrestal. And it's really, really interesting in the Indiana Jones movie. And I believe it's the scene, where Indy goes into the temple and the big ball's chasing him, and he's running out.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's coming out, he's confronted with a face. It's like all of a sudden this is in his face, and it's like a mummified face of a corpse. And he looks at it and he says, Forrestal, you got what was coming to you. I mean, it is classic.
Wow.
And a lot of that doesn't really mean a lot to people. Not many people know James Forrestal anymore. But I think, Forrestal, there you go. You got what was coming to you. But
Yeah, that only makes sense in that context, really.
yeah, it sure does. And I believe today, as would others, that when we look at some people have said that they believe the New World Order is being run from Antarctica, that the exotic machinery and the things, the Bell and the exotic technology that the Germans were developing, it very much is on the line. If you study, we've looked into this a lot about the technology the Germans had. It was very much capable of doing the things that we see being described. And this was based upon revelations, supposedly, from the occult world, from seances by the Thule Society. And there was a quite lovely young lady, Maria. Boy, I'm not going to get her last name correct, but she was a stunningly beautiful woman. and she was the medium for the Thule Society. And she would move within the very elites of German society and have seances and just get millions of dollars for Hitler. And she is the one that supposedly they claim the actual blueprints of some of their weaponry came from direct spirit revelations through these seances. And it's interesting, in 1945, when things weren't going too good for the Germans in the war, Maria said that she was going to go on a spaceship to the planet Aldebaran. Well, in 1945, she disappeared, was never seen again, but I would bet her new address was probably 666 Antarctica Boulevard, would be my surmise.
And it is interesting to think about too the spiritual aspects to this because a lot of people, I guess, I mean, everybody thinks of the tall, blonde-headed people that are in there, the people Byrd said he saw, the people that Germany was looking for, and like I mean, I know there's older stories to do with it, but there's also that spiritual aspect of summoning things from the abyss for technology purposes as well, and that leads me to the idea of gray aliens and what those things actually are, and because I mean, it kind of reminds you of the Hopi prophecies about the ant people, and because they kind of have the head shape like the
Hmm.
ants and stuff. So, what are the grays in all of this? Because that seems to be the entity that supposedly is always found at these crash sites, or and actually the one that it seems like most people, day to day people, interact with.
Well, and there are multiple theories about that also. And one of the theories is that the Greys are actually robotic or androids that are controlled. And it's very interesting. Brad Steiger, who was one of the early writers on UFOs, he has accounts where people claim they saw robots in these type of things. And there's another fella from Temple University. His name is David Jacobs, and he talks about the information he has gleaned from talking to literally probably into the thousands of people that have claimed UFO abductions. He has studied them at Temple University in a clinical setting. And what Mr. Jacobs says, he believes that there is a breeding program that has been ongoing for decades and that they are now perfecting their ability to recreate human hybrids. And Mr. Jacobs calls them hybrids. And he claims that they are actually to the place where they are, and these are the result. They will take a woman and they will impregnate her with the DNA, and this is literally fallen angel DNA. I do not believe that these entities are from planet Aldebaran. I believe we're seeing the work of the fallen ones of the Nephilim. But they will take this child and then they will raise it as they call them hybrids. And Mr. Jacobs claimed that they're to the place where they can take these children and train them and educate them, and that they're actually being put within the populace. And all of these different things, it's like there's probably a half a dozen different kinds: the grays, the tall whites, the insectoids, the reptilians, and that all of these are the result of different interactions of alien DNA with different different kinds of humans and different kind of animals. It's literally the toolbox of Dr. Frankenstein. And here again in the book of Jasher, it talks about in the antediluvian world the manipulation of animal DNA. And these things are all just the product of the Genesis 6 experiment. That which we saw and I don't know, it might not have been that crude, but there's all kinds of sophistical innovations into what the dark world is able to do. And the thing about it, the bottom line is genetic manipulation and the corruption of the human genome. And it looks that they're actually coming very close, and I believe that the time will be soon coming when they will bring forth their Uberman, that will be fully man, fully fallen angel, that will be the beast of Revelation 13, produced from their Dr. Frankenstein experiments of genetic manipulation.
Yeah, that's the part that I think concerns most people. I think, well, it should concern most people is the manipulation going on. You mentioned them introducing these hybrids to the population. I do these reaction videos like once a week, every now and then, and one of the trends that I've seen recently are about these people calling themselves Argathians or from like Argatha, and which is somewhere supposedly in Antarctica, and they believe that they're from that location, and they're all like kind of blonde. They all have blue eyes, pretty much all of them, and have
Whoa.
blue hair. So, or not blue hair, blonde hair. But it's pretty interesting to see that, and there do seem to be a lot of situations where people are encountering these entities. It seems like a lot more. It seems like way more than before. And I know I interviewed a guest recently who was talking about some of these impregnation experiments that they've been doing, and it seems that they can even do this stuff almost remotely, and they're able to use people's perception to kind of do some of this stuff, so people can be getting, quote unquote, abducted, sitting in their chair while other people are around, and they don't even really know what's going on, and all of this stuff is kind of happening within their perception. So there's a lot of like deception in all of these things, and I can see how a lot of this would manifest into like an end time deception in general. And so when you see companies like CERN and companies that are out here actively trying to, maybe what they claim to be doing is opening up a portal, kind of summoning something into this world. Do you think this is part of what they're doing, trying to gather the information that's within the earth?
I think they absolutely are. And there have been statements made by officials at CERN that they are deliberately trying to contact and communicate with entities beyond our world. They have even stated as much. And Argatha is the legendary home of the Hyperboreans in the north. And this has been associated in the oldest legends of Hyperborea. And this gets into the concept of the Golden Age. The oldest concept of the Golden Age is that in Greenland and Iceland to this day, there are entries into Hyperborea. That is where the people of Argatha dwell. And these have been described from the most ancient times. The description of these tall white people, the whistleblower at Nellis Air Force Base. We did a midnight ride on that whole, the tall whites there. The people seen by Admiral Byrd. These people have been talked about throughout time by many people, described just exactly the same. And these are certainly the product of the Genesis 6 scenario manifesting itself in our day. And when you get into the writings of Bill Cooper, and you think about whistleblowers like Phil Schneider, who died very ugly, who actually claimed to have been in a firefight with these people in tunnels in the Three Corners area out there in New Mexico. And Mr. Cooper claimed that all the way back into the days of Eisenhower, that our government has actually been working in consort with these entities, that they have known that they exist, and that they have great underground bases and undersea bases. And this all began, it was very interesting. Mr. Cooper's claim was that, and he was in the Navy. I think the year was about 1967, and he was in the Pacific, and he was on watch one night on the deck, and he said that he saw something rise up out of the ocean, big as a football field, and he says they took out everyone on watch, and of course they made him sign non-disclosures, and did everything they could to threaten him not to tell, but this set him on a lifelong quest to try to expose this. And it was the result of the end of his life with Mr. Cooper. But I believe that this is very, very possible. And this is even more after watching this Age of Disclosure video and understanding how they bury and cover this stuff up. I think it is quite likely that we are in that the government, the people in the government of our nation and possibly other nations also, that we are knowingly in league and cooperating with these entities.
You mentioned buzzword, the golden age, and it seems that the golden age is probably the high point of the year 2025. Is this is what is being talked about? What do you think? Is you think it's a coincidence that if this Argatha golden era age is being promoted publicly, do you think it's a coincidence, or do you think that maybe there's some ties to the golden age in 2025?
I don't believe it is a coincidence. And when people say the golden age, a lot of people mean a lot of different things by it. But the oldest tradition of the golden age is that at the time when these tall whites uh, lived on the earth, and of course, biblically, this is the antediluvian world when the giants walked the earth. And during the time when the giants, the tall whites, ruled the earth, that this was the golden age. And then, and some of them, some of the people, Jocelyn Goodwin, who is a non-Christian writer, writes about the golden age. She actually says that it was the flood of Genesis that brought the judgment and drove them underground. But this is actually what they believe will bring back the golden age, and this was very much this has been a big part of the neo-Nazi philosophy post World War II, and they believe that blood purity will bring back the golden age. They believe that the purification of the blood, and from the biblical standpoint, this would be the defilement of the blood, that this will bring in the golden age again. And this is a very frightening thing. And I believe this is why we see individuals. We've also done a lot of work on the tribe of Dan, and you can connect the tribe of Dan with the Merovingian bloodline and with a lot of what is going on right now in Europe and America. And I believe, as did many of the early ante-Nicene fathers, that the tribe of Dan will produce the beast of Revelation 13. And this is why I believe that there are certain people that are abducted, and they're abducted in SRA scenarios, and certain children are targeted and abducted because these people believe in blood purity. And they believe that people of certain bloodlines have certain spiritual gifts and abilities. And they believe very, very much in the purification of their blood, or as we would, from our perspective, the defilement of the blood. And that's why you can look at some of the paintings of these European royal families. You've got some odd looking folks in there because they would marry a brother and sister, they would marry cousin just to keep that bloodline pure. And it didn't work out too well in a lot of situations. But it's about the blood, it's about the purification in their mind of the blood that will bring back this golden age. And the more you see the intricacies of how these huge places that, and I'll not mention names, but we know who they are that are doing this tremendous technology and breakthrough. Now it's coupled with AI and it's just off the chart. But these people have for a long time, I'm convinced, certainly after watching this Age of Disclosure, that this is where these secrets lie, that many times the people in the government don't even have this, but that these large government contractors, they have been able to back engineer things that are just giving them crazy technological breakthroughs, which we're just seeing all along. And I believe too, I think that the whole thing back when Philip Corso wrote the book Day After Roswell, I think it was a total psyop. And this really created the idea that, yeah, there are aliens. And I believe the craft that crashed from Roswell, I believe it took off from Antarctica. And I think that the Germans were able to establish not only a spiritual, but a direct link with these fallen entities. And I think that this is something that certainly in our government today, I think we've maintained that and are pursuing it.
David, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts on this subject, because I think that like I said before, this coming deception is going to be so big, and I think that everything that we can learn about this subject is very important. So give people where they can find your content. I'll also put the links in the description, but I appreciate you coming on, David. It's always an honor when we get together and speak. And so this is going to be one of those broadcasts that I think are going to ring in thousands and thousands of people's ears.
Well, thank you, John. My pleasure. I appreciate it. And FOJCradio.com is our website. And on YouTube, FOJC Radio Underground Church. That is where we have the bulk of our material, and we do our uploads several every week. But I appreciate you having me on, John. Been a pleasure. And keep it toasty.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Hit the subscribe button, pound the like button, and share this with your friends, and we'll see you guys next time.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't